Right now, I'm interviewing a woman who is very familiar with the Arab culture. But first, what is your name, ma'am?
My name is Robin Brown.
Hi, Robin. So, my first question is, how long have you been affiliated with this culture?
I was affiliated with this culture for 2.5, about 3 years.
And are there any traditions that this Arab culture has? Can you describe one specific tradition?
Sure. There are many different cultures that many different traditions that the Arab culture has. One of them being Eid. Eid is a celebration of religious culture, and they celebrate many different types of Eid. Around Christmas, they celebrate Eid Mubarak, which is when their father was born. So in the Bible, Abraham had 2 sons, and the first son was Ishmael. So the Arab people are descendants of Ishmael, and they believe that Ishmael and not Isaac, like the Christian culture, was the chosen son. So Eid Mubarak is all about him. And it's a really great celebration. There's a lot of food and different traditions. They give gifts, things like that. One of the things that they do is slaughter the animal that they're going to eat. And it's a really big tradition. Even I heard a story about kindergartners making a paper mache lamb and slaughtering him right before school let out for the break. Which my Western friend, who is the teacher of the kindergarten class, was so amazed by that. Like, she was almost in tears. She couldn't believe it because it seemed so violent to her, but it was just their tradition. It's what they do. Another thing is that they give gifts, and one Western teacher, a different Western teacher, was given a gift of a baby goat. And they wanted her and her husband to slaughter the goat for Eid Mubarak. And the only way she was able to turn it down is because she had to tell her friends that her husband said she couldn't do it.
So, speaking of this religious tradition, what about this culture's religion? What is the predominant religion of the Arab culture?
The predominant religion of the Arab culture where we were, which is Abu Dhabi in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, is a Muslim culture. It was very interesting to be a Christian in a Muslim culture. Because of the media and propaganda, you think that Muslims and Christians don't get along, but we were fortunate enough to have many Muslim friends who invited us into their homes, and we had many conversations about the differences in our cultures and in our religions, and how, Jesus was a loving Jesus. So it was very different than what I thought it would be. The experience that I had with the Arabs and Muslims was a very pleasant and different experience than I thought it would be.
And what about other religions in the Arab culture? Like, are there?
There are other religions in the Arab culture. As a matter of fact, we had some Arab friends who were Lebanese, and they were actually Christians. But they practice different things, just like anyone else. However, the dominant culture is a Muslim culture. And that was very evident 5 times a day when the call to prayer went off. Very early in the morning, before the sun rose, there was a call to prayer. When we first got there, my family thought that it was a band playing because it's just really loud. We live really close to a mosque. And so in the middle of the day, early in the morning and late at night, you could hear the call to prayer. Initially, when we first got there, it was very obvious to us. But once we lived there for a while, it just became second nature. Like, you didn't even really notice it when it went off.
What would you say the religion's most important holiday is?
I think that Eid Mubarak is probably the religion's most important holiday. The Arab culture also celebrates the day of their birth, kind of like how we celebrate the 4th of July. they have what's called National Day. And it's on December 4th, which is their Independence Day. And it is such a big deal. They have concerts, and they paint and color their cars, and the streets are full of people with silly antics. And this is really a really good time.
So, back to culture. Are there any subcultures in the Arab culture, and how many are there?
Subcultures in the Arab culture. I don't really understand your question. Like, for instance, or what example would you give?
They say how there's like Southern culture and American culture, and how there's Northern.
Okay, yeah. Sure. Within the Arab culture, there are subcultures, and I would say it's locational in that way too. Specifically, the cultures will be different from Saudi Arabia to the UAE where we were, to Bahrain, or, it depends on where you live. The Saudi Arabian culture is a much stricter and traditional culture in that their rules are very strict. What they allow is very strict. For instance, they don't allow women to drive, and all women, regardless of your culture or religion, have to be covered. So if I were in Saudi Arabia, I would have to wear a shayla and abaya to cover myself at all times, even though I'm an American. When we were in the UAE, the United Arab Emirates is a much more tolerable culture where, as a woman, I could drive in the UAE. I wore my regular American clothes. I didn't have to cover. They were very tolerant of things. They were trying to westernize the area. But even within that culture in the UAE, where it's a lot more lenient than, say, in Saudi Arabia, you had the city, which Dubai and Abu Dhabi are more cities. So it's very modern. It's like a metropolis, And then in some of the other Emirates, it's very rural. So in the city, you have all these nice, big, tall skyscrapers and really fancy cars and nice homes. But in the rural areas, there are lots of animals and small homes and not tall skyscrapers.
So what about the foods of this culture? Are there any specific foods that you can recall?
There was one dish that I tasted. I mean, there are several different dishes that are, specific to that culture. There was this one called hanis, and basically it's like dough with meat in it. And it's one of their favorites. I was really looking forward to eating it. For me, it wasn't as tasty. So that was a little disappointing. They do a lot of pickled vegetables and roasted meat. And that's more Lebanese. The Emirati people eat lots of rice and goat, camel, and lamb. They eat lots of that. However, in Abu Dhabi, where we lived, they have begun to really westernize the culture. So actually in Abu Dhabi, there's a Red Lobster and a Cheesecake Factory, even an IHOP.
Well then, and a touchy question is, are there any stereotypes of this culture that aren't necessarily true?
Absolutely. One of the stereotypes that I mentioned before is what we see on the news, and we think that they're mean and that they don't like Americans, and that couldn't be further from the truth. A lot of people would see me if you go to the Grand Mosque, which is a religious place there. You do have to wear a shayla and abaya, and that's the only place I had to wear one. So when people, see the pictures, they're like, "Oh, did you have to cover up? Were the men mean to you? And it's just not that way. Not in the United Arab Emirates. The people are very nice. They want what's best for their children. They want to be loved. They're just like any other kind of people, and they're very interested to get to know you, and as as long as you're respectful of them, they're very respectful of you.
So, that's all I have for now. We will see you next time.
Thank you. I so enjoyed it.